Welcome, welcome, welcome. Trying to get it all in. Make sure that I cover a lot of this story, but I'm trying to fix my camera because I wasn't planning on coming on. So I am here located in the United States. I am going to be doing the top news stories here, and it's very important that we cover those because we have some very interesting ones, and one in particular involving TikTok and this ongoing ban. Well, it's not really ongoing at this point because what we have in as far as TikTok as the ban as of today's date, meaning the taping of this video, is actually banning TikTok as of January 19th, 2025. That is set in stone in a sense that that is the ruling on the original case. That it had to be separated, it did not take place, and therefore the ban on TikTok will continue. But before we get started, I want to make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for sticking with me through all of the trials and tribulations that have been happening with this channel. It will continue. We just move forward on it and just make sure you guys support and come in. I am not at my usual time, so this is another reason, but you could always come back and relook at the videos. We don't really mind that part of the situation. We just want to make sure that you get a chance to see it and get the news that you need to get. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the CEO, Brian Thompson. We're going to talk about United Healthcare. We're going to talk about healthcare as a whole, and just the responses. More that I'm going to cover. I'll cover the basics. This is stuff that you've probably heard already, but I want to go a little bit into how people are feeling about what happened, because it stands, it's a shocking response really to something that is tragic, and yet at the same time, there was a sense of a sort of vigilante justice in the minds of the persons that had been denied by this healthcare company. We're going to go into that in a specific amount of detail, and it's going to sort of enhance and just sort of make a difference on how this story's outcome will actually be. So let's start with first things first. We're going to talk about the ban on TikTok. Hi, you guys. Here comes my portal. Hi, guys. Welcome to everybody that's joining us. This is not my usual time, so I thank you. It's my old usual time, and then I switched. For those of you that are not aware, I usually do it around 6:37 in the evening. But when it's stories like this, I'm going to come in, I'm going to hit it up, and I'm going to make sure we get this information in, because this happened maybe a little past 45 minutes to an hour ago that this ruling on TikTok actually took place. Now, a lot of people, how you guys doing, are in a very large position in TikTok. We're talking some of these people have 1.4 million followers. We're talking some of these people that's their highest producing social media platform, even though they're on others. And then also, what happens after TikTok is banned? What is the expectation for all of these other social media sites? Well, now, interesting enough, some of you might be either a victim of it or surprised that it happened, that YouTube most recently got rid of a bunch of channels. Your channel may or may not have been one of them, but they got rid of not just the conspiracy channels as they did before. Someone's asking that question. It's not just those. They got rid of a lot of channels for one reason or another. And this happened because it looks like they're making space to upgrade the platform for the possible people that are going to leave from TikTok onto YouTube. The plan for a lot of people was to go from TikTok to YouTube. Yes, if you see yourself blocked, unblock yourself. I'm not doing that. That's just happens from time to time on occasion. Could be. I'm not going to go into it any more than that because there's no point in giving. I'm not going to give anybody else a platform. But just unblock yourself. I'm not doing that, so know that you're more than welcome to unblock yourself. Also, so TikTok's ban started at least a year ago. So there was plenty of, in the court's mind, time for everybody to understand that they were going to move forward on that. That the intention all along was to move forward on this ban on TikTok. So a lot of you that are shocked right now, don't be shocked, because really it was what the intention was all along. Now, the thought to save it is really what everybody was looking to do. But the Supreme Court, which is going to be TikTok's next step, TikTok has an opportunity to do an emergency plea, for lack of a better description, to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court does not have to hear it. So it can choose to simply say, you know, I don't want to hear this. We've already made the ruling, and that's what it's going to be. The ruling's already been made, that's what it's going to be. Or if they choose to hear it, TikTok can buy time, for lack of a better description, possibly while the case is going on. Much to say, kind of like it was happening anyway. And people continue to invest in their TikTok with a lot of reassurances from the administration that was in at the time that they were going to save it. Now, I say that not to criticize the administration at the time, which was the Biden administration. It's only to say that the 19th being a critical date, January 19th, is the day before the new administration takes office. So what is the dedication for the new administration that will be taking office, and the priority for it to, if possibly, support or save this social media platform? Now, we have to also take into consideration why this suit took place. It is security. Now, that is an amendment, right? I believe it's the fourth. Correct me if I'm wrong. You know, I'm going by memory on that one. But it was to protect the security. This is not, TikTok is not an app, an American app. It is a Chinese app. There has been a breach in that area with regards to this app already. Many of you will notice that TikTok tends to be the most preferable hacked app. And it is because there are portals open in that area that the Chinese government can't get your information out of it. And they have. And because of that, TikTok became the app to ban. So that's why it was more certain that they wanted to ban TikTok. Now, people took measures to save it because they felt, A, it was a good platform. B, there were many people on it making money. C, that they could block the portals and secure the site a little bit better than it was being secured at the time. Looking at my notes. But that didn't manifest itself coming into the decision that was, sent down today as of the taping of this video. So we have all that in play. It was a counter. Yes, I'm going into that. So it was a counter that TikTok was a First Amendment right. Now, you heard me say even as long as a year ago that I didn't think this argument was going to fly. First Amendment and security both are in the Constitution, but one is going to override the other. And First Amendment rights are going to take a back seat to security measures that are taken for the state. It just didn't make sense that people say, oh, well, we have a right to First Amendment. Yeah, but you also have that same right on all the other social media sites. Why would you specifically need to save TikTok? That already had a breach in security, and the other sites did not. So I didn't think, even going into this argument, a lot of people use this argument for legal purposes. So many things. Oh, First Amendment, freedom of speech, First Amendment. But it's often abused, like many of the legal descriptions, because you can sort of color this one a little bit more. First Amendment can apply to a lot of things. But in real life, if you look at the actual, how it's written in the Constitution, it just simply didn't apply here. It's not that it doesn't apply to people having First Amendment rights on TikTok. That's not how this is being applied. It's being applied up against I believe, Fourth Amendment or the Securities Amendment. That didn't, looking at it really from the constitutional standpoint, that didn't make sense to apply it to this particular case. And it was seen as a reality when you get a ruling like this, when they say, yeah, TikTok's gonna be banned. Yeah, because people make money on TikTok. That includes advertisers. So for anybody to ask the question, why would you care? You're being sarcastic. You're just wasting everybody else's time. And you're clearly ignorant and not informed because you're unaware that advertisers advertise on TikTok. You're unaware that people make money on TikTok. And you're unaware of the case legally as it has been for the last year. So if you're going to be in this particular live, you need to be a little more informed because we're going to call you out if you come asking something just to get attention. Okay, so if you do that again, I will block you. All right, so everybody says I am not tough. I'm just saving everybody time and energy on people that are in here to either block people or they're in here to mess up the live or they're in here to, create distractions and all of this nonsense that people do. I'm here to report stories that are interesting to the people that watch my channel. So if you're not interested, don't be on the channel. Okay. Let's talk about the CEO. Yes, his name is Brian Thompson. This is actually a newer story. It is unfolding and developing. It's been 3 days. So we're going to talk a little bit about the things that you should know. And the thing about this, what makes this case so interesting is there was a couple of elements that made it interesting. A, it looked like it was a contract killing. Now, not necessarily that the killer himself was a contractor, but that they were contracted or paid, in other words, possibly to kill this targeted individual. I don't think it's a question by anybody. I believe that the authorities, like Joe, it's Kennedy, that was speaking earlier today or yesterday regarding this case, the commissioner, the mayor, almost everybody agreed, even just spectators that are following this case, kind of sensed that it was a target. I mean, it was literally obvious if you've seen the video that Brian Thompson was targeted. Like, it wasn't like an accident. But even if just by watching the video you didn't think he was targeted, there are inscriptions on the bullets. Which is interesting because that takes time to do. You don't just get bullets and they have inscriptions on them. You have to get an inscription placed on the bullet. And to take the time to do that, if this person is caught eventually, it shows premeditation above anything else. That, the time alone, if I was a prosecutor, I would tell him thank you, because the time alone it takes to get these bullets, to get inscriptions on them, to get words on them, speaks to premeditation. Now, how it applies to the case is what was inscribed on it as well. This is a CEO of United Healthcare. Has the highest denial rate, as high as 33%. That's higher than any other healthcare company. Every time a claim is denied, guess what? The health company makes money. Saves money, for lack of a better description, right? So to have a rate that high is already questionable. The person making the denials was under investigation for insider trading against his own company. So right away you question the integrity of the company because the company itself has already been in trouble for these types of practices. Something similar, if not exact. So now we're painting a picture. painting this picture because I want you to know, if you don't already know, what's on the bullets that were entered and shot and eventually killed the CEO of United Healthcare. So it is denial, defend, depose. Now you're like, what does that mean? Well, denial, everyone automatically made reference to the fact that that was his job. He was in charge of that as the CEO of the company. Healthcare company with the highest denial rate. If you looked, and we'll get into this a little bit more in depth, but I wanted to talk about the fact that the responses from the people that were denied by this healthcare company almost made it sound like this was almost a comeuppance for this particular company and the man that helped to make these denials in this company. But there's also a book which has been made reference to. Somebody found it. I did not do this research. This is somebody else's research. But they said that delay denial defend. Delay denial defends, which is different than what's on the bullets except for the word denial. And defend. Dispose, look up the definition of that, might have made more sense for what the ultimate goal was to achieve by shooting the gentleman. But this book does talk about healthcare. It talks about how companies, number one being United Healthcare, do deny, do save money, do get money for the denials, and how to defend yourself against it. That's why this book is referenced. It's actually a college book for, if I got the information down correctly. Again, this is not my research. This is me borrowing someone else's research. Unnamed sourced research, because I don't know where this came from specifically originally. But the thing about it is that when you talk about healthcare and everyone's like shocked this poor gentleman did not get any accolades. Like everybody was like, oh, well, I was one of the people denied. If you start looking at the comments, there were some pretty stiff comments about him. But when you think about healthcare and the denial of healthcare that you're actually paying for, there is an emotion behind that, because whatever you needed could have kept you alive or took your life. Many people could have lost their lives based on these denials. To have a percentage that high, you have to question whether or not these denials were necessary in every case. Yeah, a lot of people felt like that. A lot of people just was like, oh, well, you live what you live how you die how you live kind of thinking. And I didn't feel that callous. I just felt like I could see how he could have been targeted in this way with so many people. You think of a percentage of 33%. Think about how many people that is. Think about how it's one of those things where you just can't believe this type of thinking. Let's talk about the shooter a little bit. Yeah, a lot of you are saying that you don't think that this is also a bad crime, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know if it's like if you kill a mobster. I don't know if that's the same. I guess you don't care if it's white collar or blue collar, he's still a criminal. Is that what you're making reference to? Yeah, I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily, but I do feel like, that a lot of people that could have lost a family member or could have gotten sicker or might feel that way. And a lot of those comments were coming from those people, because 33% of the population is a large percentage of people getting denied for something that you're paying for in a case like that you do have the help that you need. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the shooter, who we now have great pictures of, by the way. I love today's society in the sense that you really get filmed doing almost anything. Like criminals have the same mindset, antiquated, that they did back in the 1950s. Like you think that there are places you can go, like a hostel, which is where he was, and then later do a crime. And there'll be no pictures or camera. No, no. It almost doesn't care where you are because the original videos came from the street. You commit a crime and you have no mask on when you check into the hotel. He did everything else. He used a fake name. He went to a hostel, which is like off the radar. He, used a bike. He, made sure he had his timing down. He wore a mask at every other location, but it only takes one to get you. So he had no mask on because allegedly he was flirting with the woman at the counter who asked him to smile, and he did. So we have a picture of him not smiling with a mask, without a mask on, and smiling without a mask on. There's footage all over the place of this guy, and an eyewitness that was there at the scene of the crime, a taxi driver that actually took video. So it's a lot harder to do crimes nowadays. It just is. And I feel like, I feel like he did everything else, but you just can't beat cameras now. They're just everywhere. And it just leads to him probably getting caught eventually. If the pictures were so good, if you haven't seen them already, I literally, if I knew him, could have identified him. I could have looked at him and been like, oh, that's Joey. I'm making up a name. This guy's name is not Joey. But I'm just saying, if I was familiar with this person, I would readily identify him without question. I would just be like, oh, that's Joe. Like, that's how clear the photo is. That's how close the photo is. It can be enlarged even. And it's just, even if he did everything else, okay, he also came in on by bus, which there's a record of, and footage, we can assume. Which they're probably not going to show because they don't need to show the public everything. They need to show the parts that we can help to use to help identify, but not necessarily details. One of the other details is the gun that the person actually used. Now, this is how you know the person had familiarity with weapons. It's the type of weapon chosen. It's like an old spy weapon that you would not see in a lifetime. It is a modern version of it, sort of an updated version of it. But more importantly, you would note when the gun jammed. Not even necessarily that he could unjam it. It's the amount of time it took him. It was very quick. You can kind of mess around with something, kind of be a little familiar with guns, but it'll take you a little longer, but you'll eventually get it off. This is not the case. This is the fact that it jammed, and he was familiar with that process so much that it just took him a couple of seconds to get it, actually unjam it, and then proceed to shoot Brian or Mr. Thompson several more times. No, I have empathy, period. I have empathy for both sides. If I've been rejected, I said that I understood. I understand if somebody tells you no and you can liken it, somebody did to John Q. The fictitious story is a story that happens every day in real life. Not the part where he takes the hospital over, but the circumstances that led this character, played by Denzel Washington, to take over the hospital. The circumstances under which you just feel hopeless and you want to save either your own life or the life of your loved one. And you're getting rejected because of the type of insurance you have, or because of the person doesn't even give you options on what else to do. I think that should be a requirement too. I think if you have to reject someone, if it's the last case scenario, the worst case scenario, you have to reject this person, they should be equipped with options. You should tell them, let's try this. We'll give you a letter if you need it. You should be doing everything that you can to save a life. And it just doesn't appear in this case, as in many cases, that that's the case. So corporate people are heartless. So let's talk about coming from an ex-person that was an executive. I think that you can get caught up. That life is a bubble life, okay? You don't remember what it's like to be a regular worker. You can easily forget. It's just like having, being in the bubble of affluence or old money. It's a bubble. So that type of lifestyle is a bubble. You're on a different end of the business. And you can become callous and heartless if you allow yourself to continue that way. You really can, because you don't readily identify. You are taken care of. You don't have to worry about health care. If you're denied, he made $10 million a year, he could have paid cash. So if his worst case scenario happens for whatever reason, his insurance doesn't take, he's got, was he at that job 3 years, $30 million at the minimum he had to be able to pay an emergency medical bill, or multiple if needed. So the lack of identity isn't there. You're also there so long. He was just in that position for 3 years. He was actually at the company for much longer in other departments. He meaning the victim, Brian Thompson. So I think the practices of the company also come into play. If the practices of the company deny first, which is what it appears to be for this particular company, to deny first, you get in the habit of doing that. And I think you can allow yourself to become callous. But if you look further and you look at some of the policies that the CEO was developing, they were going against the denial process. Yes, they were. You do have to look that up. Fact check it. Fact check what policies what things he was working towards. He meaning the victim. So I'm not trying to defend anybody. I'm just telling you the facts of what happened. Yes, there were knowledge denials. Yes, that was the policies appearing to be the more of the greater for the company's intention. And it also appears that there was a lot of changes that were intended to be made, which can also get you in trouble if you're going against what your company would like to be doing. And you're in a position to make changes that they don't want you to make. No, I'm not alluding to it could have been the company. I'm just saying that that's the position he could have been in. The shooter looks white. I don't know, because you can't, there's no way to tell. You don't see hair, you don't see anything but just his features and just his face. So he could have been just a light-skinned, Hispanic. We don't know. We don't really know what race he is, and at this point it doesn't really matter. It only matters that he gets caught. Yes, so there was an award offered for $10,000. Really? I don't know if we need to question whether or not they're trying to find him, but that's very small. No disrespect to anyone that thinks $10,000 is enough, but for a CEO in a large city, a sort of a contract scenario or a possible paid killer, it just doesn't seem fitting. It seems like it's extremely low. Nobody knows why he didn't have security. He actually did have threats that had been going on for quite some time, according to his wife, Paulette Thompson, who was divorced from him at the time, but they had been separated for, I say 6 years, I think is correct me if I'm wrong. But she did say, yeah, he had threats. So no one knows why he never had security, or why the company would not have at least issued some sort of security in a situation like this? Um, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows why that made sense. That a person that's been threatened for this long period of time, because he was threatened for over, well over a year, um, and got threats up until coming towards the conference he was on his way to. Why you would not have security, or why the company would not have issued security. No, I'm not surprised the company didn't issue security. Does it sound like I said it that way? I said it that way because the company denies people health care on a regular basis, more than most. That doesn't come across as being the most empathetic company in the world. So I would think that if you were getting threats as a result of this, they might have thought it was your problem. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I would think anybody with a concern or empathy, an empathetic company would have said, you need some sort of security. You need to be protected because we need to take these threats seriously. They may never manifest themselves, but we need to take them seriously. For that to not be the case in a company like that, I'm not shocked. Not at all. I think personally he should have had some security on his own. He could definitely afford to have, at least one person accompany him to main events, especially if it's going to be him walking alone in the morning. It was about 7 o'clock a.m. when he was actually shot. So you want to think about that hour. It would have been crowded in New York, but it wasn't. For some strange reason on that street at that particular time, it was not crowded. Well, I mean, you would think that the shooter would have, they stated, there was a statement made, this was made by ABC Live, that the shooter knew the victim, meaning Brian Thompson, better than his wife knew him. That's not my quote, that is a quote coming from the correspondence that was talking on that network on the second day. So obviously he's done some homework, which is not a lot to do when you're a CEO, because you can usually look up most of it. You can get schedules down and these types of things down if there's no protection for you. Ideally, no one should have known where that man was going. They should not have known where he was staying. There should have been protections for him. Even if you didn't get him a physical bodyguard, hiding his schedule and making him not walk to that by himself, or getting him a room in the hotel he was, there should have been, put under the company's name, so therefore he is not able to be pinpointed specifically. There should have been a lot of things that could have protected him from even being on the street by himself and being able to be timed like that. I mean, there literally was excellent timing according to the commissioner. So, I mean, it's like he meaning the shooter, literally only waited 5 minutes. That's not a long time. That means you've got that. You're waiting 5 minutes, which is just enough time for them to get up the street. So that means he knows the schedule. You guys are all big on the company. I must be saying it as if the company did something. There is nothing against the company or anybody at the company at this time. They have the shooter, and that's all they have. If it becomes a contract thing, I'm sure they're going to research and try to figure out who was the person that actually. But at this point, we don't have that. We only have 3 days in, as of the taping or of this live, a shooter, a video, and a video of what the shooter looked like, and sort of a timeline of the shooter, because they made quite a few stops. So Starbucks, they ate, just things to show premeditation, right? They came in town, they ate. He had a backpack at the time of the shooting that was missing shortly after the shooting, these types of things, the names on the bullets. So you just have this sort of introductory to the case type information. But it is a general consensus that this could have been a contract killing. Maybe not necessarily from a professional contractor, because he did make a lot of mistakes that a professional contractor probably would not have made. And that would have been not checking for cameras before you went to the hostel. Just little things that judging by Iceman, who was like the #1 contract person, things that he did back in his day to never get caught. So that was way back then. Iceman was in like through the 70s through the mid 90s, before he ended up, not doing that anymore. But just little things like that, like that type of surveillance to keep yourself protected. How many cameras are on the street? These types of things weren't done. Jamming frequencies of the weapon. Not to say that he didn't do that, because he did undo it pretty quickly, but just these types of things. It appears that they did some research on the weapon itself, because of the type of, it's basically a spy gun. So that means not a lot of noise, if any. There's a silencer on there. The ability to track, but also that can work in your favor if there's no weapon found. If there's no, even if you take him to court and there's no weapon found, it's because they traced it, but they could only trace it so many places. That can work for you or against you. It can work against you, obviously, if they locate where you got the weapon and that you're the one that purchased the weapon. But it can work for you if there's only so many places to look for this weapon. This weapon is not found in those places that it's supposed to be found in, and therefore you have nowhere else to go. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, the camera, it could have been hidden in a spot that he didn't notice it, but it was somewhere where that front desk was, where if he had been looking, he would have noticed that there was a camera there and maybe not pick that spot. Maybe not check into a hotel. How about you try something else, type of thing. So he might have not been a professional, but somebody that could be contracted out. I say all that to say that. I have been saying I thought TikTok would be banned. I really did say that a lot. It's because I really thought that. But there's still an emergency, so that there's a possibility that may not happen. So there's still time to save it. If all things considering, if the Supreme Court allows themselves to hear it. And I don't really see a reason why they wouldn't, on the surface, just off the top of my head, speaking right now. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I do, but I don't talk about them. I don't give them a platform. I just do my videos. Thank you. I try. I do what I can to get that information out as fast as possible. I don't do all stories. I just do the ones I think really are going to make some sort of impact. And I think as far as healthcare is concerned, the reactions should speak to the healthcare companies, including United Healthcare. This sort of extreme measure and people's reactions to it. We don't really know why this man was shot, but we can surmise that there were a lot of people that didn't feel empathy because of the practices of the company. And what is that saying? You're saying something about, hey, my, for an example, this, I don't know if this actually happened, but, my relative passed because of your denial. Maybe you should have thought about that before you start heavily denying people for money, for profit. It was kind of the general consensus. And so I think that is a change that needs to be made in the healthcare industry. It just does. You have to sometimes stop hiding behind your job in any field to be cruel. Because it's cruel if you deny someone and don't offer them some alternatives. So, All right, I don't want to labor this too much. I just wanted to talk about those two things. Yes, there's other top stories. Of course there are. Puffy? Gonna get me started on the Puffy story. So I'm gonna touch Puffy just a little bit, just because you guys want me to hit that. Denied, right? We all know this. We know that Puffy was denied. I think, meaning he was denied bail. Either under these, I feel like, if you're asking for just my opinion on it, the defense actually helped keep him in jail with this sort of elaborate, uncommon, stipulations to if he were given bail. What you did, in short, was show that he had resources. A whole lot of them. You basically told the judge, yeah, this man has everything at his disposal. So we're just basically going to just let him be free. Oh, and by the way, yes, he did try to influence him. Yeah, we know these things are, while he was in prison. Yes, he did break a few rules. How do you clear that up? You really don't. You might have made it a little better if you sort of downplayed the fact that he has all these resources. You can just deal with what he did in jail and just focus on that, which I would have done if I was a defense attorney. I would have been like, let's not give this elaborate, sort of I have every resource in the world version of please give me bail. How about we try to focus on, we made some mistakes because we were desperate to get out. How about we do that? We broke some rules in jail, but it's only because of all of these reasons why we need to get out. But they didn't do that. They went in there and was like, oh, let's do 50,000. He'll be at home and we'll make sure he has. And I'm like, have you seen this man's house? And I'm thinking of it as a judge, right? I'm thinking to myself, really? So we want to give a privileged person the privilege of having bail, even though he posed himself as a flight risk and broke the rules while he was in jail. This is what you're coming to me with today in my courtroom. I would have been like, and I don't think they thought it looked like that. I think that they were thinking that they were stifling him and putting lockdowns on him and making sure that he was, watched. And on the surface, if you're not thinking that fully through, it probably could have come across that way. But a judge is going to think that fully through. And judging by the judge's reaction, meaning the reasoning he gave, the judge, for not giving him bail, for actually denying Puffy Combs bail, speaks to that answer, speaks to that understanding that they looked at that as a whole. And that's sort of what the story told. It told the story of a man that's used to being very privileged. He's used to getting away with stuff. He breaks a lot of laws and rules, and he wants us to bend them for him. He's also a flight risk. That's kind of like, so that was kind of how I saw that. I thought, oh, guys, do you not want him to get bail? Because literally, this is not only like the third or fourth time you're asking for bail. You stepped it up since the last time, which means you broke laws in between that time. So yes, it's alleged. We don't, that he was intending to use this time while he was on bail. Or it is a possibility, we'll say that. It's a possibility he could have used this time while he was out on bail to continue the pursuits that he was doing while he was in jail, which was to sort of taint the jury pool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one said that that's what he was going to do. We're just saying that that's a possibility, and the judge will not take a risk like that in federal prison. It's bad enough you're being accused of crimes, as Puffy Combs is. He's accused of human trafficking. Driving people and persons across state lines to do acts of prostitution. He's accused of, just all of these types of sort of false imprisonment type charges. So those are federal charges. So when you start going into federal court, you're going to have even less leniency because you not only committed a crime, but you bothered to commit it wherever you were. You created an enterprise that falsely led people to be lured into your criminal activities. That's not light. So when you're thinking bail in a case like that, putting that person back on the street, they better be clean as a whistle. I mean, if anything, you should have been getting points for your good behavior in jail. Penitentiary, excuse me, you're not penitentiary. So, I mean, I think that he went in there and the defense should have just said, listen, we're going to give this a try. But with all of that against my client, I would have really been like, okay, we're going to focus on why you did what you did in jail. So they can see that you're not going to continue it. You were just doing it to get out because the conditions are so bad. And I would have brought up that old case like, listen, you guys have been, this jail has been sued for its conditions. You know, I would have went into that argument. I would not have created that elaborate. Yes, to answer your question, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? What are all these exceptions? Like, don't do that. And the judge somewhat agreed. I don't know specifically what the judge was thinking, but it came across as if the judge was kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're making a mockery out of my courtroom. Like, knock it off. Yes, so I spoke about this before. Yes, his sons did have civil charges. They're not. Puffy himself also has civil charges as well, but we have to get through the criminal court case first. It is my belief that they're probably going to finish that before they actually. Yes, I did hear that. I heard that there was some leaked footage of the actual trials, which is a federal court. There is no video. There's no, You're not supposed, even the press, which is legally able to report on cases, can't go in there and film the proceedings. You know, I don't know how. You know, people are very clever. You know, it's like back in the day when you could get movies before they came out, before we had like streaming. Back in the day, there used to be people that would get the movies on release date and sell them for like half the price. And, you know, there was a time when you had to be at the movie to see the movie. Like, there was no live streaming or anything. So it's the same thing when you have court trials. Court trials are very popular. People like to see the process. People want to know what's happening in there, and people want the exclusive. And so there's always those people that are able to be clever and get some tape in there and film some stuff. No, I don't know how, and I probably wouldn't tell people if I did, because I am not trying to encourage that. It's going to drive the poor judge crazy if he's running around and people are constantly filming footage. I mean, I don't think the public needs to be in a federal, I don't think that needs to be public, myself personally. I feel like in a case like that, you need to just let the judge do his job. He doesn't need to be distracted by anything. The prosecutors don't need to be distracted by anything. The defense, this is a very serious defense. If you're in federal court, you've done some really, you know, like heavy charges. And everybody just needs to be focused. So I think reporting on it, that's great. We should report on it. If you want to do some still shots, that's still paintings and whatnot. But I don't think just filming the proceedings should be, I think it should not be in a federal court. I think it's okay in you know, regular courtrooms, but I don't think federal court should be. I think everybody should be focused in there. Right. Do you work in a legal? Oh, you're a lawyer. Yeah, I think a lot of people just, it's hard. Yeah, to focus anyway. So you've got cameras in there, you know. Some people will put on a show, you know, rather than actually defend. And there's a possibility with the popularity of these lawyers that they might start putting on a show. You know, so yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say whether I thought he was guilty. Somebody's asking me, do I think Puffy's guilty or innocent? It's sort of premature. Um, does it look like he's guilty as all get out? At this point, yes, it does. But does that mean he's going to get the book thrown at him? Maybe not necessarily. We don't know. It depends on how those cases are presented, what evidence they have, what goes on inside the courtroom. Because anything outside of that, we're just speculating because we don't really know what evidence they actually have. I tell you all the time, when I do reporting on cases, I always say I'm not going to actually say until the trial starts and we start looking at what's presented in there, because sometimes, and most of the time, it's stuff that you haven't heard of yet because it was kept from public or it was brought up or discovered during the trial. Did you unblock yourself? You were blocked? Okay. No way. I would never block you. You're in here all the time. Yeah, okay, so I just wanted to cover that. I don't want to talk too long about these cases. We talked about the ban on TikTok. That is, as of today, the TikTok will be banned January 19th. TikTok, we believe, may take an emergency appeal out to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court does have the option as to whether or not they are going to hear it. If it is heard, there's a possibility that TikTok will be sustaining itself as a social media here in America app while the trial is going on. That's just their option. They're just given an option as to whether or not they want to take the case or hear the case, not take it. And then we talked about the CEO, Brian Thompson. We talked a little bit about healthcare and the reactions to that. Is really what I wanted to cover, was mostly the reactions. That's where healthcare is today. That's how passionate people are about making sure that when you need it, that you're, first of all, that you're not just paying into something to be paying into. That you're getting, that first of all, everybody deserves healthcare because everybody deserves the chance to live. But also, you need to be last case scenario denial, which does not be denying people with family and friends and yourself, possibly life on the line. So I think somebody that's crazy or somebody that has a different thought process might have taken that into their own hands, saying, if you want to put lives on the line, how about we put yours on the line? Because people are not stable. A stable person might look at that and be angry. They are not thinking of taking the person's life. They're just thinking, I can't believe healthcare. What other means can I do legally that are legal to take care of this problem? But people aren't stable. Mental health is a big thing where they will take on, the wrong answer to the question. So this could have been the case. Some of you are saying now that you think it could be the company. That could be the case too. We don't know. We don't have enough development on what happened. And unless they somehow figure out or find or someone witnesses to the fact that this was a contract killing, we can't even call it that readily. We can call it that immediately just from the circumstances and what we see so far, but we don't even know that for sure. And we don't even know if that person will turn over anybody if they are caught. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about Puffy, which I did not intend to talk about. Why do I laugh every time I say that? It's so much. It's just like they're really starting to get on Ashton Kutcher. Now they're starting to trickle into the people that attended the party. We got Denzel doing like a knee-jerk, I wasn't at all his parties, or I didn't stay, or I only went to one kind of reaction. And we're like, well, okay. I don't even think we were thinking about you technically, but thanks for letting us know, kind of thing. You got, people like Ice Cube, like, hey, I never went to one party. Nothing. So it's kind of like everybody's sort of, yes. So just very briefly, I was ready to go, but you guys aren't going to let me go right now. What is left of the entertainment industry? Because we have Disney now, workers international workers as well in human trafficking. We've had the Me Too movement. We've got human trafficking. We've got Epstein, Weinstein. We've got several companies. We've got music moguls. We've got our cases, which I don't want to say what they are, but a lot of people and moguls, Russell Simmons' example being in our cases. So if all of this was going on, these freak-offs, these, sort of inappropriate things, if we were to believe Cat Williams and some of the things that he was saying, and that was verified, by, if all of that was going on, how much of the business is actually left? This is not to say that it's not a floater business. Floater business meaning it can run as a shell. It really can. And the public really will be none the wiser at that particular moment. But I feel like it's more likely than not that it is running that way. That it is running as a shell. Entertainment as a whole. Not including sports. Talking about film, televisions, music labels. A lot of those have parent companies like Universal that are also studios that have music sections. Where is that industry gonna go? We have just recently on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, just a proclamation by people using the social mediums to not follow celebrities anymore. And it was posed kind of like, what would happen if we just don't follow celebrities? And they proceeded to, I guess, start with Kim Kardashian. I don't know why she's a target all the time, but that seems to be the theme of, there's lots of stories and people talking about, what did we see in celebrities in the first place? Like, why do we follow celebrities? And it's sort of, everybody's sort of taking a turn into the sort of rebellion of what was happening inside that we as the public did not know. And what type of people were actually running the show that we were so quick to want to get involved with and clamor to know and all of these things and, made these sacrifices to get into this inside circle that turned out not to be what we thought it was, possibly. That just recently, like literally within the last week, talking about the not following celebrities, what would happen. What we see in celebrities, all of this just started a week ago. I would say 2 at the most because I don't stay on social media very long. But it sort of became this sort of ripple effect of people going like, where are we in society today? This sort of type of thinking, these types of videos popping up. Well, no, I mean, nobody wants that because it's a business like anything else, right? Celebrities are the face of the business. They're the show inside, in front of the business. But the business could be running as a shell because there's some major players that are actually getting and have proven to be involved in some stuff that quite possibly could have been, I like to use the term shady, right? I say unfavorable, but it doesn't quite capture the moment. When you say shady, people get it. People get dark, shady, back end kind of thinking. And it was really kind of what was going on. Yes, somebody said what sacrifices they have made even if Brooke Shields had to do it. So, yeah, I mean, I think we were all shocked when Brooke Shields had a Me Too movement. Okay, so for those of you that, like, what happened to her? For those of you that are younger, so in the 80s, okay, Brooke Shields was like the face. Okay, there was Christy Brinkley and others, but really Brooke Shields was that generation. She was younger and she sort of went in and she was one of the few that had darker hair and all of these things. She was in movies and all of these things. And she was young because her first role, I think she might have been 13, maybe 12, that was sexualized so early on. In the 80s, we thought that just happened and she went on with her life. We did not know until recent times when she put out a sort of, I think it was on Hulu, somebody correct me if I am wrong, yes it was Hulu, where she spoke about her experiences, and it fit within the confines of Me Too, which was basically exposed publicly, mostly by accredited to Rose McGowan. She was on Charmed. She did used to date Marilyn Manson. So I don't know what season she was on. I didn't watch the girl. I did not watch the show. But she literally was on was sort of the first person to be like, this is what happened. This is what's been going on. And then it is a ripple effect. And nobody thought tell me if I'm wrong, I did not think about Brooke Shields at all. I knew she was what would be considered sexualized today. Back then, nobody thought about it. I mean, we thought, okay, she's young, but we all know she's a kid. Nobody thought about it. And then she exposed her Me Too movement, her Me Too moment in this documentary about her life. Nobody knew. When we had the exposure of all of the women that were in the Playboy women empowerment movements, we had whole movements wrapped around the Playboy structure. And we found out not only that they were sexualized, but they were also living within the confines of the Me Too movement on a stricter scale, on a more a less confined scale, because they were considered, sort of asking for it, according to the women in the show. This is a Playboy After Dark. I did not have anything to do with that production, so I'm just saying, I'm just going by what these women that were there in that era, that passed all the way through it, finally came to realize as the Me Too movement started to push itself out. Here comes a lot of it. Now, I say all that not to expose what was already exposed. We already know these things. I say it because it exposed very main character people and their businesses as well as their staff. So that's a lot of people missing. This is what I'm saying. Moving us forward past what we already know. Does that mean a shift now in healthcare, in entertainment, in all of these industries that we were complaining about that had just the tip of the iceberg shady practices? So it's food for thought. We don't really know where all this is going, but we do know that it's sort of been bubbling under the surface for a long time inside this pressure cooker that ultimately has to blow. So I explained it earlier. Someone asked me, what did I mean by a shell? I mean, a shell company, it's running with very few people. But it's still capable of doing that because entertainment industry has lots of parts to it. So you can sort of run it even if it is, not full. When you say a shell, right, it means there's nothing on the inside, right? It's just the outside structure. So to the public, it may look like it's the same, but it doesn't look like it's the same because the public is responding according to what they're seeing, and they're saying, wait a minute, if all we have are celebrities on the forefront, who's running the business? And why do we care about celebrities in the first place? That's kind of what it ended up being. Do I think, someone's asking me if I feel like the endorsements of Kamala Harris had something to do with that because she lost. I think it showed us that we don't listen to them like that. them meaning celebrities. I think even Taylor Swift, I think she has a ridiculous amount of like 3.5 million, but I don't know, a whole bunch of followers, 15 million or something crazy. I don't even know, 35 million. I don't know, I don't really follow her like that. But when she comes out and endorses, you know, you would have thought, oh, that was it. And back maybe many years, that would have been it. It literally would have been enough. I mean, if Marilyn Monroe would have came out and endorsed somebody, that would have been the end of it. I mean, she could just wear something and people would just run. People still buy stuff from her. This is like decades and decades and centuries. You know, it's been a long time since she's, you know, taken decades since she's been alive, and people still buy stuff because her face is on it. This is appearing to no longer be the case here with celebrity. Slowly. Because, you know, I always get on the edge of stuff. When I was like, TikTok's probably going to be gone, and everybody's like, they're never going to rule. We have First Amendment rights. And I'm like, that's not going to work. People kind of go, I don't know, she might be right. And then, you know, we watch it play out. So I'm saying the same thing here. I'm saying when you start to ask, that's a question that's never been asked before. We might ask why we follow one specific celebrity. Like, you know, why am I following, you know, I won't say Kim K because people jack her all the time. Well, I don't know why I'm following Khloe Kardashian. But if you're saying that in general, what are we listening to celebrities for in general? And you have the top celebrities in question with shady practices. That's the first time in history that that's happened. So we don't know how that's going to turn out because it's a question that's never been asked before. We never questioned it before. Just a whole, as just the public never questioned why they followed. They just mindlessly followed. You know, you just fell in love with the celebrity and every movie they're in, you go watch it. If they endorse something, you endorse it. If they wear something, you wear it. If they say something, you're listening. If they do something, you want to do it. And that was sort of kind of how it was set up in Hollywood. That's how we followed in Hollywood. In the golden era, that was like the era where a celebrity said anything, people were going to either buy it, follow it, or do it. And it stayed that way for a really long time. And we would have thought it was the same until just recently when people started asking questions. And I'm like, that's an interesting question to ask. And it's never been asked before. And it was enough to make people think about it, to actually put action to it. Maybe we won't. Because when Kim posted, I'm sorry, Kim. I think we get on Kim all the time for like too many things. But, you know, when Kim posted, I think she got 23 views, which for her is unheard of, right? I think she has something like millions of followers. I don't really follow her channel either, but millions of followers. It's not that I don't agree with it. I'm not following because I don't because I agree with what the person said. I don't follow because I didn't anyway. Like I was never real, you know, I wasn't one of those people. So, I mean, if I liked somebody and I thought that they stood for something, I would, you know, it could have been anybody, a business person, but I generally just didn't, you know, participate in that type of following of people. Not for any particular reason, because I don't even dislike Kim K. I mean, I think it's, as a matter of fact, I defend her a lot of times because I'm like, dang, again? You know, like, no, I didn't. J-Lo was justified. I don't know if Kim K was necessarily justified. She was kind of just thrown into being a celebrity. She didn't ask to be one. They turned you. People's obsession with her turned her into a celebrity. She didn't ask to be one. So she just rolled with what it was, something she couldn't change at the time. So that's why I say that about her. I don't know about the rest of them. She started it, so I give her credit for really being the main person in that family that does everything, because she literally was the person that gave all the other people opportunities. No disrespect to the other people. You use the opportunities, but you used them, the ones that she gave you, or happened as a result of her. I am not dissing the family. I'm just saying. I would say the only other real independent one that sort of didn't have anything to do with Kim was the model Kylie. No, which one is that? Whichever one, the one is that's the model. I think Kylie's the one that does the makeup, but Kendall. Thank you. Kendall Jenner, because modeling had nothing, they're all too short. It had nothing to do with it, except for Chloe. But she has a different look. But she was the only one that actually did that on her own because she was tall enough, because she was, had the look that they needed, and she was able to develop that skill set on her own. So that really had nothing to do with Kim. Kim couldn't model if she wanted to. I think she's like 5'3" or 5'4" or something like that. She's short. Oh, she's shorter than that? Oh, well, 5'3". Okay, she's 5'3". Speculated, because I don't even know how tall she is, honestly. How did I start talking about celebrities? I don't know. I was on here talking about the latest news, and I guess celebrity is the latest news, because we were talking about the fact that they were going to ban, or they wanted to stop following celebrities in the way that they have. And then somebody posed the question as to why they were doing it in the first place. And everybody sort of jumped on this bandwagon. And I was saying more to the fact that people jumped on the bandwagon when somebody could have said that and it could have had no response at all. But it was the fact that people were like, you know what? Yeah, exactly. You know what? You're right. That's true. I'm not gonna. So that came from me talking about Hollywood being maybe a shell right now because of all the things that were going on, which stemmed from talking about Puffy. See, this is why I don't talk about Puffy, because Puffy leads us into the rabbit hole of celebrity, because, a lot of why people follow this trial is because he was so well known. He meaning Puffy Combs. Some said Weinstein became old overnight. He was already old. He just, the trials, I think a court trial is called a trial because you're actually living one as well. It's very on the lawyers, on the judges, and on the defendants and so forth. All right, you guys, I gotta go. I've been on here a very long time. I don't like to make my videos this long, but I did want to address those issues. Thank you for those of you that were here. I'm sorry you got blocked. You should not have ever been blocked. Might have been an accident. Okay. And I appreciate people that participate and follow me through all of it. We don't go by numbers here because I already know, because I can see you. And there's just other things going on. But we will just keep trucking along, fixing the problems as we go along, and reporting what we need to report and doing the things we need to do. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my TikTok while it's still there. I hate to say it though. I know you guys. So people are saying too soon. I can't say anything. I have way more people on TikTok, followers than I have on YouTube, but I can't do anything if it's not going to be there anymore. So see it while you can. And then I will make sure I see you guys